Either A, go on this preview appointment, or B, don't go on the preview appointment. Don't go on any appointment unless it's a highly qualified listing appointment. And so I want to preface this, gentlemen, with this, that there is no right or wrong way. There really isn't. It's what works for you might not work for somebody else. And I think that's really important. Before we get into this, maybe we get into a debate, maybe we don't. I don't know. We'll find out. But there's no silver bullet. I think this is more of a question around how you convert. Meaning this, I'll give the two arguments, and then we can have at it with both you guys. We'll get into some healthy debate. I think this has to do with either A, you're going to double down on your skills over the telephone and use those skills that will lead you to a higher quality listing appointment, or maybe you have your skills face to face are your strength, which I think most agents would say it is. That like, hey, once I get face to face, I'm so much better, and I'm playing to the percentages that over the phone it's way harder because there's no rapport, there's no relationship. It's easier for somebody to brush you off when they're just on a telephone call. But if you're sitting at their kitchen table, the entire playing field is different. And so maybe you use that preview appointment strategy as the lead generation conversation. And so meaning this, I'll unpack that really quick, and then we'll open this up. So one agent says, okay, the only time I'm going to go on an appointment is when I qualify this thing over the phone, and I'll use my skills, and that lands me on X amount of appointments. Agent B says, I'm going to go on a lot more appointments that are maybe not as quality, as maybe they're unqualified. And as a result, I don't do as many contacts over the phone because I spend more time driving and going to face-to-face appointments. And I use that preview appointment to qualify listing opportunities. So that's the two-sided conversation. So Dominic, let me go to you first and see kind of how you see these two things, and then we'll get into it.
Love it. Love this topic. So I would make the case that I believe it's NAR in the NAR annual profile of buyers and sellers. I believe the statistic is that somewhere around 80% of home sellers end up signing a contract with the first agent they meet with. So just based on that statistic alone, I am going to take every opportunity I can to put myself in front of a potential home seller, whether it be an expired listing, a for sale by owner, somebody that I just had a conversation with that might want to move in 6 months. I want to be the first face they see, even if there's no opportunity to list that home like that day, because I'm starting the relationship from the best possible position, which is at a face-to-face meeting. So that's where I'm coming from with this.
Great point. Ben, how do you see this? What's your opening arguments?
The face-to-face takes adds an element of human connection that you just a lot of times don't have, and you have to overcome on the phone with skills, right? Because once you come face-to-face, we all know this, like you hide behind the phone, or in a lot of cases, people hide behind their steering wheel. There's a whole nother side of them that comes out that just otherwise wouldn't. So I would just say, depending where you're at in your career, a lot of times you can lean on one or the other. If you've got extra time and you're trying to build confidence, then I would argue that you want to go face-to-face. If you have less time and more confidence and the ability through using your skills, then you want to leverage the phone.
Okay. Yeah, well said. So let me add this to the conversation and see how you guys see this. I think that everyone would agree with this broad brush. The theory is, if an agent could choose and they said, the only time I'm going to leave my home office or leave my office to go and see someone is when that person was ready to sign a listing contract, I would prefer that I just went on those. Is that something that that we could all agree on? Like, is there any reason why you guys think an agent would disagree with that, or do you guys disagree with that? If that was the case, I could wave a magic wand and say, Dominic, the only appointments, every appointment you're going to go on for the rest of your career is going to be one where someone's ready to sign the contract. It's either going to be with you or the next agent that they interview today. Is there any reason why you wouldn't do that?
No. If that were the actual reality, I would put myself in that position where I would stay at my battle station here, and I would just make phone calls until I have a seller who's ready to meet with me at a qualified listing appointment. It just doesn't always work out that way.
That's what I'm going to get into. Yep, that's exactly right. Ben, you see it any differently?
No, that's, call 3 people, go on 3 appointments, take 3 listings. That's a perfect world, no doubt.
Okay, so yes, that's right. We're talking about the perfect world, right? So that's the theory. That's why I think there's a lot of counter pushback on the whole preview appointment, because it's easy to say, well, why are you going on these appointments when these people aren't ready to sign a contract? And because there's theory and then there's the real world. And so that's what we're talking about. Those worlds meet, they collide every single day in the trenches. So here's another reality, is that the vast majority of homeowners they don't wake up one day out of the blue and they're ready for a lockbox and a sign to go into their front yard. Most people think about selling weeks and months and sometimes even years before they actually make a move. I think anybody listening to the show would agree with that, right? And so if that's the case, Dominic brings up a really good point in that you got really 2 options to go about this. The other broad brush is like, if you could talk with homeowners that are going to sell their house at some point in the future, and option A is to meet with them at the beginning of their home selling journey, and you had an opportunity to get in front of them face to face and then follow up for, call it 3 months before they're ready to sign. That's one option. Option B is the only relationship you have with that person. You still have the conversation at the beginning of their journey, but you don't meet with them because you're the agent that says, well, if they're not ready to sign, I'm not going anywhere. And you only have a phone relationship and you follow up over 90 days. I think, Dominic, you would say you'd be agent A every single time, and agent B doesn't have a prayer to compete against you.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And even if everything was apples to apples, like, same level of skills, same level of everything, if Dom's had a relationship and talked to somebody for an extended period of time, over the phone, somebody's going to tell me, I've been working with Dom for a while. He's helped me. He's added value. I owe it to him, right? I think we've all heard that before. And unless you're like bringing a tremendous amount of value, it's super hard to overcome that relationship he's built and the credibility of being their agent before he's even their agent.
That's right. Because every follow-up conversation after the face-to-face meeting, it's, oh, Dom, I know what you look like. I know what you smell like. I know your personality. Like there's a human element to that versus maybe Ben Riles. I forgot who you even were because I'm getting so many calls from so many different agents. And so what would you say then, Dominic? Let me go back to you. So the counter argument is, or not the counter argument, I would say, I think now is a great point to define what we mean by a preview appointment. Because here's the other thing that I caution agents. When we're coaching an agent, I think the distinction is, this is the way I see it. After an agent, so when we talk about preview appointments, there's a quality preview appointment and there's ones that aren't of that same quality. So let's just clearly define what we're talking about. What I'm not talking about is an agent going out there and leading homeowners to believe that they have a buyer for their home. The seller hears that, and of course the buyer's interested, and of course they're going to let you in their house under the assumption that you potentially have the buyer who's going to purchase my property. So yes, it makes sense for me to show the property to the agent who's got the buyer. That to me is not a quality preview appointment. Dom, let me go to you. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's starting the relationship under false pretenses, and you won't end up with any kind of relationship at all if that's how you begin. And so anytime we go on a preview appointment, depending on the lead source, it's with the understanding that you are stopping by to meet with the seller. They can show you their home. And at that point, you can have a discussion about whether working together now or in the future makes sense. It's just a very non-threatening way to get in front of somebody who either is currently trying to sell their home, has tried to sell their home and failed, or might be thinking about selling their home in the future. It's a way for you to, for them to sample the goods, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it, I think the problem is we have certain biases when an agent hears these different terminology: listing appointment, preview appointment, and we start to come up with what we believe those things mean, and the definition sometimes throws the agent off. And so I look at this as just a home consultation. I had one of the agents that we coached literally ask me, I can't remember exactly what the question was, but the question was, how do you present, or how do you position a homeowner getting together with a homeowner if they're not ready to list? And I said, and to which I responded, that's like every listing I've ever taken, probably, because most people think about selling long before they're ready to have a lockbox on their front door. So that's been my own experience. Is I will have conversations with people I know and people that I don't know, referrals. And most of the time, the initial conversation is, hey, we're thinking about making a move. We'd like to meet with you to look at our options, to find out how much we can sell, to get an idea of how much we'd put in our pocket. I don't know why a lot of agents have a tough time with that. Like, understanding that that's just the normal process, and naturally they're going to go meet with a professional real estate agent. The same way, if you're thinking about getting a divorce, what do? You do a consultation with an attorney. If you have some pain in your mouth, you go and have a consultation with the dentist. Hey, let me see what's going on. Let me just poke around a little bit. And what do? Then they set an appointment to fill the cavity. Why real estate agents have such a hard time understanding this, Ben, I don't know. What do you feel like is missing?
Going into the appointment with, if everything goes well, I am there to transition this to a listing appointment, right? So it's like I'm sitting here trying to think of an example similar to what you just described, but these leads are not a referral where it's like a friend of your grandma and she's like, hey, no matter what, like I'm selling with you. I've made the decision. Come on over, right? Like, let's do this. It is oftentimes, like you said, like you need to put a face with the name. You need to have a warm up. And that's where a preview comes in, and it can transition to, hey, everything went good. The cavity's there. I've got an opening right now. Should we jump into this? Versus thinking a preview is either, I can't even bring it up. I don't want to sell. I'm not here to sell your home. I'm just here to give you free advice, versus going in and saying, hey, here's my opinion. If you would like to potentially work together, are you open to hearing what that could look like? And then just transitioning right into the appointment.
Well, I'm going to counter something you said, though. That's, I think, exactly what I'm saying. Like most of my business nowadays is coming from past clients, center of influence, referrals, right?
Correct.
I'm saying almost 100% of the time when I get a phone call from those people, it's, hey, we're thinking about selling this fall. We'd like to schedule some time to meet with you. It's super rare that I get a call and says, hey, bring the lockbox, bring the sign. We want this thing listed today inside of your systems. That is what I'm saying. It's super rare.
Yeah, it's not an impulse buy. Nobody wakes up and yesterday they didn't even think about it, and today they're like, I'm going to buy a car. Like,
yeah,
it's just a different process with selling.
Well, yeah, and my point was that it wouldn't matter where the lead came from or where the opportunity came from. It's just, we're talking about, you have to look at the percentages. If it's the 80-20 principle, and probably even way more, 80-90% of the time, I'm having conversations with people. It's let's meet to discuss our options. And it's 20% of the time where they're like, yeah, bring paperwork. We want a lockbox. We want showings this afternoon. Dominic, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking about that, my thought was anybody who has the exact counter argument, hey, I'm not going on an appointment unless these people are ready to go. I would ask them, how many homes have you sold where you never met the seller face to face? And obviously there's going to be a few if you're working some of the absentee owners, et cetera.
Right.
But most of the time, you're at some point going to meet face to face with the seller. And I would submit that the sooner in the process you have that face to face meeting, the more likely you're going to be in a position to earn the business.
Yeah. So now let me change gears for a minute and see things from a different perspective. Okay. So I go back to how I started this conversation, in that I look at a quality preview appointment under the pretense that we're meeting with the home seller to discuss the listing and the selling of their home. Like, that's why we're going to the meeting. I hope that that's clear for the audience. The reason in which you would do that and have that as a strategy in your business is because for whatever reason, you were unable to do that over the telephone. This is the part I think is debatable, because like I said before, if you had to choose, if you could wave a wand, wouldn't you rather do that over the phone? In other words, what I'm saying is, as you can build your skills, you can set the appointments based under or use your skill set, and it requires you having to have more contacts. That's the key thing. So let me get really clear. What I'm saying is, option A, if an agent has 50, 60 conversations per day, they can be pickier and choosier on the appointments they go on that are higher quality, with the person being further down the funnel, closer to wanting to sign a contract, versus the agent that does a lot less prospecting, has a lot less conversation. They'd be more open to having more of these appointments, these preview appointments, because of everything we just talked about. And so that's, I think, the debatable topic, right? And Ben, that's what you were saying. As an agent becomes busier and busier and busier and busier and busier, maybe they can't drive around and have 20, 30 of these preview appointments a month, Dominic. They don't have the time to do that anymore. How do you see that piece?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. I'm just curious, like,
I agree.
Because you and I have had that conversation. It's like, I agree with the strategy. We just spent, the last 10 minutes talking about the upside to the previewed appointment strategy. The downside to it is you don't get to have as many contacts, because you spend a lot more time meeting these people face to face, because you're qualifying at the appointment, versus the agent who does 50, 60, 70 contacts a day. They don't have to drive around as much. And as a result, they have way more opportunities for potentially higher quality appointments, while you're driving around talking to people that are going to sell in 6 to 12 months. I'm meeting with the people who are ready to sign potentially today.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I agree with you that a highly skilled agent, somebody who has excellent telephone skills, can make more contacts and can go on more appointments that will lead to a sign in the ground much sooner. The reason I'm hesitant to go all in on a business like that is because when I meet with somebody who's selling in 6 months from now, in a month from now, that person that I met with a month ago is 5 months away. And that's just the evolution of a pipeline business. I'm not at all suggesting that that you shouldn't be good on the phone and concentrate on finding people who are ready to go now. There's probably some sort of balance there. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think you're right, because I go back to the whole 80-20. If I were to put my bet on 10 agents to say, okay, which model we're going to go after, we talk about theory and then we talk about real world. It's very, very unlikely that a real estate agent is going to prospect 4, 5, 6 hours per day that would allow them to find potentially enough appointments to go on, versus the agent that maybe does half the contacts, half the prospecting, and they're meeting with more people. the likelihood of the agent meeting with more people face to face under the pretense of a high quality preview appointment will probably outproduce the other one long term, right? Long term. It's tough to say though, you know, 'cause I can see it. I can see it both ways. But yeah, Ben, how do you see it?
The two things that I see is the difference between disqualifying in person and disqualifying over the phone, right? So if you're deciding to do that over the phone and disqualify some of those people, and you have the skills to do that versus doing that in person, I think that's why people get frustrated with it, because they don't have the confidence to do that or the skill maybe to do that over the phone.
Yeah, and you know what I keep getting caught up on is because I just hear agents in my head. That's probably what screws me up with this conversation, is what they believe a preview appointment is. And so I just kind of go back for myself as a reminder. If an agent is talking with a seller and you can set an appointment with the seller, with a seller who says, Ben, we're thinking about selling our house and we'd like to set up some time to interview you, you're going to take that appointment every time.
Yeah.
You're going to take that appointment every time. And so I don't see a case where under those circumstances, even if the person, again, isn't ready to sign a contract today, that you wouldn't go to that. And I think we're all on the same page with that.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I guess the way I balance all of this and the way you coach, and you've coached us forever, is, yeah, of course you're going to look for those immediate opportunities right out of the gate. That's how you start your day.
Yeah.
You're going to look for that qualified appointment right out of the gate. And then if there isn't one, and oftentimes there isn't one available for that day, then I'm going to start hunting for a preview appointment for somebody who's further down the funnel, further up the funnel, I guess, Jim.
Yeah, there's a really good graph. Let's see if I can find this thing. Remember, Colton had it in his book. Once I find this thing, I'm going to tattoo it somewhere. But really, what it shows is it's a triangle, right? And it says at the top of the triangle, you know, I think it's like 3% of consumers are ready to transact at any, like right now, right? In any given day. There's only 3% of any market in any industry of the consumer ready to do business today. And then the middle, right, is like, I don't know, I'm making this up now. I know the top is, again, 3%. Then it's probably 60% are ready to do business in the next 3 to 6 months. And then you have got the biggest bucket at the bottom who are ready to consume your product or service over a longer period of time. And so that's really that's what this conversation is all about. And Dominic, I think you hit it at the beginning of the episode. It's like, listen, if you could get in front of these people who are going to sell, and I love how you say that, like if you can meet somebody who's going to sell in 3 months and you meet them today, well, next month they're only 2 months out. And in 2 months, they're 1 month out. And in 3 months, you get the listing. It's hard to compete with someone that they've never met with. And if you could do that every day, do you think it's fair to say if someone has 20 conversations that they can get 2 really good leads per day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And that's what we coach to, right?
Yeah.
So because what ends up happening is that's how someone can get 40 to 50 really good seller listing leads every 30 days. And their business explodes, right? Because you can build that pipeline.
Yep. Let me give you some evidence as to why I know that my theory or how I believe that my theory is true in practice is that I'm on the phone every day like you guys, and I run across prospects all the time that tell me, no, we've been working with Billy Bob for the last 8 months. He stops by the house, keeps us updated on the market. We're definitely going with Billy Bob. Right. Yeah. I want to be Billy Bob in that case.
That's such a great point. So, it's a really good point that I never even think about. You're right. How many times do you hear a conversation with a homeowner who says, yeah, I've already got an agent. So when the time's right, we're going to list with him. We're going to list with her. It's like, I want to be him or her. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So the way to put yourself in that position is to be the first person they see face to face. Be extremely good at that preview appointment. And by good, I mean offering the type of value that a homeowner can't get by jumping online and finding it for themselves. That's the differentiator.
So the final debate for me is just that some coaches in the industry are still like, you qualify every appointment 100% or you do not go on that appointment, meaning that they're either ready to sign, and if they're not ready to sign, you do not go. I'll ask both of you, just as we get to the end of the show today, if you were in a debate with that person, Ben, I'll go to you first, right? It's like, no, you do not go on an appointment unless it's 100% qualified, in that person is ready to sign a contract today, or you do not go on the appointment. How would you respond?
I strongly disagree.
It's good. Based on everything we just talked about, right? I mean, you don't have to regurgitate. That's a great point.
Exactly.
Dominic?
Yeah, I would tell a person who's telling me that if that person, their prospect, isn't ready to list over the phone, I would say, is it possible that somebody might tell you something different in person than what they're telling you on the phone?
So good. Absolutely.
That's how I would stick the stake in the ground on that argument, because we all know that everything changes when you're face to face.
That's exactly right. I can't believe it took us this long to get to that point. I mean, it's the point. It's the number one reason that what people say over the phone is most of the time not what they really mean when you see them in person, because nothing is as it seems. And that's the drop of the mic. The question Dominic just asked in that debate, that little hypothetical debate, is the mic drop. Has there ever been a time where a seller said, hey, you know what, we're not going to list the home, and you drove by the next day with a RE/MAX sign in the front yard? Has that ever happened? And it's just like, how do you argue that? And if that's the case, it's like, well, then you're missing a lot of business if the only time you're going to go on an appointment is when somebody verbalizes over the phone, a complete stranger you've never talked to in your life, that they're ready to list today. And if they're not, you're not going to go on the appointment. You're probably losing hundreds of thousands of dollars per year.
Yeah, and sometimes the person that says that is the exact person you don't want to work with.
So true. It's so true. So to put a bow on this, listen, make a smart business decision. Do we want you driving around meeting every Tom, Dick, and Harry in your market? No, we're not suggesting that for a second. We're saying to go out there and have quality conversations and set appointments with sellers under the expectation that the meeting is about how you're going to help them sell their property. It is not misleading the consumer. It's not leading a seller to believe that you have a buyer for the home, and so you get the seller all excited. And of course, those appointments, my kids could set those appointments. A fifth grader could set those appointments. We're not talking about those, right? We're talking about getting in front of a homeowner who is selling their property, who wants to meet with a professional and interview a professional to list and sell their home in the future. That's what we're talking about when we say preview appointment. Any last thoughts you guys have?
Yeah, let those other coaches keep coaching that, please.
Yeah, great point.
Only list people, only go on appointments when they promise they're going to sign with you when they get there. Perfect. I love it.
Yeah, that's good.
I would just say that we're not selling over the phone, right? So it's like, right, let the sales consultation be in person, not over the phone. So obviously they're not going to commit to that.